Welcome back to the Counterfeit Emotions podcast. Uh, And thank you for joining me on the journey of exploring how to find the one emotion without it and without a counterfeit, and that's peace. This week, we need a lot of peace. I'm sure you're aware of what happened with Charlie Kirk. The horrible events that occurred have affected us all deeply. And I wanted to do a special episode to specifically address what's happening not in our country or in our world, but what's happening in our hearts. What's happening inside our souls? Because the events that have happened, they have a lot of emotions that come with them. And one of those is trauma. And I've shared this on previous episodes, is that my favorite definition of trauma is an event that our brain can't comprehend. And an event that gives our brain so much disparate information that we can't even put the pieces together. We can't make sense of it. And if you found yourself saying the words, I don't understand why this would happen, or this makes no sense, or this is so horrific, I can't understand it, that's actually a trauma response. It's a response that says some event happened that was so outside of the norm, that was so, in this case, horrific, indescribable, that your brain can't put the pieces together. No matter how hard it tries, it's saying, I don't understand this. I can't fit any type of logical story to this. And that is the definition of trauma. Whether you're waking up at night in cold sweats. I had a friend tell me that over the weekend. He said he wakes up every couple hours replaying the events in his head because it's affected him so deeply. I've had people share that they literally shut down for an entire day or more because of it. This is a trauma response. And when we get into these responses, it's really, really important to understand what emotions are going on inside of you. So if you'll come with me for a minute on this journey, and let's just explore what emotions you might be feeling. Some of the emotions might be anger. You might be incredibly upset at what happened. And I can understand because it doesn't make sense. You might feel fear. I have many friends, and in fact, my wife was on her way to UVU. My Patty was driving to UVU when it happened. I know people that were actually at the event in person. And when we experience that so close to home, when we experience it in a way that was so horrific, it affects us in deep ways. And we might want to say, I'm angry. I'm angry that someone did this. I'm angry that someone took a life. I'm angry that Charlie Kirk is no longer with us. I'm angry for all of these things. I can understand. I can understand what you're feeling. In fact, I I saw a big string on LinkedIn. I saw this LinkedIn post that was commemorating Charlie Kirk and how he wanted to have civil dialogue, how he wanted to talk, and how he said that without civil debate, then that's where we turn to violence. And he was talking about this and mourning the loss. And there were several posts or comments in the post that said very disparaging things and even kind of horrific things in the post. And I responded to one out of anger. I I didn't call names. I didn't, defame him or anything like that. But there was a guy in the UK that basically said because we have the right to bear arms, that people have the right to kill others. And I gave a retort to that. And because of anger, that emotion that came up with this trauma. And now it's my job to do what Charlie said and have civil debate and go back and rewrite that post so that I can engage in a way that reflects who I want to be, my character. And we're going to talk a whole lot more about anger and its authentic counterpart, advocacy. But I want to really keep going on these emotions. You might feel fear. Like I said, if you were there, if you were at the event, if you were driving to the event, if you were tuning in live to the event, you might feel fear. This is my home school. I went to Utah Valley University. I was on the board of trustees. I'm currently on the Wolverine board, the sports board. Like, this is my school. And the fact that someone died in that way on campus, that someone was assassinated, that was murdered, it can produce fear. It can say, am I safe? Are my loved ones safe? Another emotion that you might be feeling, and I've actually heard a lot of people say, is the feeling of disgust. The actual disgust of seeing Charlie die. The the grotesque nature in which he died can produce a lot of disgust inside us, but we can also feel disgust for the act itself. And as I'm going through these emotions, ask yourself, which one of these are coming up? And let me share that trauma, one of the reasons trauma is because of the explosion of emotion, because of the overload of emotion. And our brain is working so hard to put meaning and to put any kind of sense to what happened, that all of a sudden we get this flood of emotions. And so as we go through these, don't just say, I feel this one emotion. Look at, do you feel all of these emotions? Do you feel some of these emotions? Which one is coming up the most? Which one is going to be right at the surface, the highest? So we talked about anger, we talked about fear, we talked about disgust. You may want to blame, and that goes along with anger. You may want to blame someone or something or an organization or a group for what happened. You may want to say, well, it's the left that did this, etc. And blame does not help. It's important to advocate, and again, we'll talk about that later. But being in a place where you're blaming others, it actually just fuels what I call the anger danger cycle. So ask yourself, am I wanting to blame others? And if you are, just accept that. Right now, we're not placing judgment on any of these emotions. We're just exploring and witnessing inside our soul, what emotions are we feeling? So, is it the feeling of you want to blame someone? Is it that disgust? Another word that keeps coming up with a lot of people is that it was horrifying. That's a very valid emotion. That's a very valid emotion. Another one might be a feeling of loss. That if you watch Charlie regularly, I happened to watch him that morning. I was in Hollywood and woke up in my Airbnb and saw some really beautiful clips that Charlie had posted. And so you might feel loss, you might feel grief. You might say, I I really relied on Charlie and his opinions for helping me understand the political landscape better. You may actually have disagreed with Charlie, maybe even vehemently disagreed with Charlie, but you still had him as a character in your life. That if you watched him so that you could disagree with him, you might actually still be feeling loss. Even if you didn't like Charlie or like his views or disagreed with what he said, you can still experience that loss because he was a character in the story of your life. So ask yourself, am I feeling loss? Am I feeling grief? Very, very much so. That could be the case. Some other emotions that might have come up are disconnection. Do you feel disconnected? Or the opposite, do you feel connected? If you're feeling that disconnection, if you feel like you want to lash out at others, you want to disconnect from others, pull away from those that have a different belief than you do, then that's a great indicator. That's actually the first indicator that you're in a counterfeit emotion. The authentic says to connect. The authentic says, I want to reach out to others so that I can support them, so that I can feel their support and love. And that connection is key in the healing process. Some other emotions that you might feel are confusion. It just may make no sense at all. And truly, death, assassination, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And if we try to make sense out of the nonsensical, we're just going to spin in our heads. Accepting that it doesn't make sense is one of the important steps of dealing with this kind of trauma, is saying it doesn't make sense. And I have to surrender the fact that it is nonsensical, it's unthinkable, it's even indescribable. And let yourself accept that that's where you're going to put this in its space. That's where you're going to hold this in a place where you realize it doesn't make sense. And give your brain the time off. Because right now, if you're in that trauma cycle, your brain is going 100 miles an hour trying to put these pieces together and trying to figure out, okay, what happened? How did it happen? Why did it happen? All of these things. And if you give yourself the permission to say, this doesn't make sense, then it gives your brain a little bit of a break to say, okay, I can see it for what it is. This horrible, vitriolic attack that doesn't make sense. And that last part is really critical. That doesn't make sense. So ask yourself, is that one of the emotions that you're feeling? Is confusion? It's one of the emotions you're feeling, that just befuddlement to say, I really want to make sense of this and I can't. As we go through these emotions, ask yourself, and there's probably more that I haven't even covered, but ask yourself, am I going to let these emotions drive the bus, or am I going to drive the bus? And one truth that I've shared, and I'll continue to share, is we are not our thoughts and we are not our emotions. And in fact, I saw a beautiful clip today of a psychologist who said we don't even own our emotions. Think about that. We don't even own our emotions. And the reason I bring this up is because our thoughts are spinning at 100 miles an hour. Our emotions are just swirling inside of us. But if we're willing to take a step back, if we're willing to look at the issue as is and say, I'm going to pay attention to my emotions regardless of what happened. I'm going to look inside. So we'll separate these two things. We'll separate the event and then we'll separate the emotion from the event. And just watch, just witness. And if you can think back to when you were a kid, laying on the grass, looking up at the sky, you would watch clouds float into view and then float away. If you'll spend just a minute with me watching the emotions that you're feeling inside. Are you feeling anxiety? Are you feeling stress? Are you feeling that disgust, that fear, that anger that we talked about? Just picture those in the skyscape of your mind as one emotion after another flowing through. And some of the emotions, they might be a normal cloud. Some might be very dark and ominous clouds, but you can still watch them as they float through. You don't have to act. You are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are someone higher than both of those. And as you start to separate the event from the emotions and look at the emotions, that's when we can start to heal. And it's really important to have conversations around this. I'm not saying around the event, around the emotions around the event, to talk to others and say, I'm really angry right now. I am really upset that this happened. And discuss that outside of the event, or say, I'm really disgusted, and honor the feeling inside. Honor that feeling, but don't let the messenger, that feeling, become the dictator. Don't let that feeling drive the bus. You get to drive the bus. You get to be the one that says, I can understand these emotions. I can't understand this event, not yet, but I can understand these emotions that are happening. And that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to watch those clouds float across the sky of my emotional landscape and say, okay, I see you. I see you, fear. I see you, anxiety. And if we can take that one as an example, let's do, everybody, if you're watching this podcast, take a deep breath in. The deepest breath you've probably taken all day. Ready? And breathe out. Do one more. And a final third breath. And now let's watch that emotion. Let's watch that emotion of anxiety float across the sky and acknowledge it. Say, hey, anxiety, I see you. I've known you for a while now. What message are you bringing to me today? And the message anxiety is bringing is alertness, awareness. It's bringing a message that says, prepare. And you can watch it as it floats on by, saying, hey, I need you to be alert. I need you to be aware. I need you to be prepared. And watch it float out of you, because most emotions, not all, but most emotions last about 90 seconds. And that's it. After the 90 seconds is what's called the refractory period, where we get to choose what we're going to do with that emotion. Whether we're going to let anxiety throw us out of the driver's seat and take hold of the bus, or anger, or any of these others, or if we're going to hit the next bus stop and say, hey, anxiety, thank you so much. I received your message. I believe this is your stop. And let it go. Let anxiety step off the bus. We get to make that choice. And one that I really want to focus on, one of those emotions I really want to focus on today, is anger. Anger is an important emotion, and it's also the counterfeit. It's the counterfeit of advocacy. Anger never builds up. It always destroys. And with anger, there's what's called the anger danger cycle. And so if you're experiencing this emotion and you want to lash out via social media or any other way, consider this. Every time a person gets angry, the person they get angry at perceives that anger as danger. And then oftentimes that spins back to anger in the other person. And now we've spun the wheel and the other person is on the other side. And there's only ever two reasons that someone will get up angry, ever. The first is danger. If the bear is coming at you in the woods, grab the stick, poke it in the eye. That's an important aspect of anger, is personal survival. But the other is perceived injustice. And in this case, a true injustice has happened. Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and that's not okay. That is not okay in any way. And if we take that event that is not okay and we turn it into anger instead of splitting it off into advocacy, then we start the anger danger cycle, or we're playing into the anger danger cycle. What I mean by that, again, is if I perceive danger, this very real thing happened and there's danger in my life, now I'm going to get angry. Then the person that I'm getting angry at perceives danger and they get angry, and then there's more danger, and then there's more anger and danger and anger and danger and anger and danger, and it spins all the way up ferociously, creating that anger danger cycle. And this is where I'm going to ask you personally to replace anger with forgiveness and advocacy. It's not our job to get angry. That's exactly opposite of what Charlie Kirk would have wanted, what he does want. He wants us to have civil conversation. He wants us to have kind and intellectual debate. That's what he would want. It's not about getting angry at others. It's about becoming an advocate. One of the emotions that I've heard from several people that have reached out is that they feel a need to act. They feel a need to advocate. And that's a beautiful thing. Advocacy is what we do when there's an injustice and something needs to change. When that happens, we can either go to anger, hurt people, violence, rage, horrible comments on social media, or we can go to a place of forgiveness and advocacy. If you look throughout the world, this is exactly the place that the great leaders went to. Gandhi could have gotten mad. Gandhi could have acted out in violence. Martin Luther King Jr., another great example. People were acting out in violence because there was a real injustice of racism. And he didn't. And if you look at those that acted out in violence, we don't remember their names. We don't. But everyone remembers Martin Luther King Jr.'s name. Everyone remembers Gandhi's name. Because they literally changed the world. And that's what I'm imploring you to do. Is number one, act in forgiveness. Number two, act in advocacy. Is that feeling inside like you need to do something? Change that something from acting out in rage to doing something, acting out in love. And Charlie was a Christian. I'm also a Christian. And there's some beautiful scriptures that I'd actually love to look at, because this is what Charlie said over and over again. And I want you to consider these words as I read them. These are the words of Jesus Christ. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers. Whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also." And then, of course, he gave the admonition that challenges each of us. Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. The admonition wasn't, if you've got an enemy, well, do everything you can to hurt them. Flame them on social media, destroy their reputation, hurt them physically. No, that's not the admonition. The admonition is love your enemy. Bless them that curse you. This one's so applicable to social media. Do good to them that hate you. If they're on the other side of the aisle, do good to them. Pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. And then he said this, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. This is where we need to go. Love is authentic. Advocacy is authentic. And we can advocate for a better world. We can advocate for a better America. And when we do, that's going to help in the process of that trauma. And let me be very clear. Advocating doesn't mean hurting, tearing down, destroying. It doesn't mean hate, vengeance, vitriol. Advocating means I love me enough, and this is the key word, and I love you enough to be willing to advocate for a better way, advocate for a better life. And yes, this happened in my home state. This happened at the university that I love. This happened very close to home for me. And I've been so grateful for the response. There haven't been any burned cars here in Utah. There haven't been any riots. There haven't been any stores destroyed or people hurt. There's been vigils. And it's been beautiful. Each time I drive past one, whether it's at the hospital that Charlie was taken to or at UVU, each time I drive past, my heart swells because that's the response. The response is love. The response is loss. The response is grief and feeling that grief instead of anger, instead of hatred, instead of I need to get back at this person. That won't heal you. If you've had those feelings of anger, know that anger does not heal. Anger can't heal. Advocacy can. Forgiveness can. And like Christ said, love can heal. And that's my invitation to you, is to step into a place of advocacy, forgiveness, and love. Step into a place where you are reaching out to bless those that curse you, to love those that hate you, that despitefully use you. Be that person, because that's where your healing is going to happen the fastest. And pay attention to the emotions that are happening and ask yourself, does this emotion serve me? Or could it be the counterfeit? I pray for you. I pray for your family. I pray for Charlie's family. I pray for our nation. And I pray that as you explore your emotions, as you dig deep in these emotions, that you'll be willing and ready to make change in your life towards love. That you'll be ready to make change in your community, because that's what advocacy really is all about. And when you do that, the trauma will dissipate and you'll once again be able to find that emotion that has no counterfeit, which is peace. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And please do something today. Number one, watch your emotions. Number two, advocate. And maybe even go and change that comment on social media and reach out to the person that you've been having an argument with. And do it in love. Actually seek to understand why they feel the way they do, so that we can get rid of the divisiveness and we can together find a better way and find peace. Thank you so much for joining me on this special episode. And until next week, I hope you can find that peace in your heart.